Imagine if the power went out tomorrow. Not for an hour or two, but for months. Entire cities plunged into darkness. Hospitals losing power mid-surgery. Water treatment plants grinding to a halt. Supply chains collapsing because trucks can't navigate without traffic lights. It sounds like a doomsday scenario, but it's not hypothetical. And if you're interested in how vulnerable our modern infrastructure really is, you'll want to stick around. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss deep dives into the systems that keep civilization running. On September 1st, 1859, something extraordinary happened in space. The sun unleashed one of the most powerful solar storms ever recorded. Astronomers around the world watched it unfold through their telescopes. The explosion was so bright that observers could see it without optical instruments at all. This event would become known as the Carrington Event, named after Richard Carrington, the astronomer who witnessed and documented the initial solar flare. He sketched what he saw in his notebooks, careful drawings of the massive outburst on the sun's surface. Within hours, that energy began racing toward Earth at speeds exceeding 1 million miles per hour. The solar wind, laden with charged particles and magnetic energy, collided with our planet's magnetic field. Telegraph operators across the globe reported something astonishing. Their machines were catching fire. Sparks were shooting from the equipment. Messages were being transmitted without any power source connected. Some operators reported receiving electrical shocks so severe they had to abandon their stations. In Europe and North America, telegraph systems simply stopped working. The infrastructure that connected continents was disabled by an invisible force from space. But here's the crucial part. The world survived. Telegraph operators worked around fires and electrical hazards, but they survived. People adapted. Gas-lit streets still provided light. Horse-drawn carriages still moved through cities. Factories powered by mechanical means still operated. The damage was real, but the consequences were manageable. Why? Because in 1859, human civilization didn't depend on a fragile, interconnected electrical grid. Today, we've built something completely different. Our modern power grid is a marvel of engineering and coordination. It's also terrifyingly fragile in ways our ancestors never imagined. Across North America alone, over 6 million miles of transmission lines crisscross the landscape. These lines carry electricity from power plants to substations, from substations to neighborhoods, from neighborhoods to individual homes. Every second of every day, millions of decisions are made automatically to balance supply and demand. If a power plant goes offline, the grid rebalances in milliseconds. If demand spikes, more generation comes online within minutes. It's a dance of incredible complexity that happens invisibly to most of us. Thousands of people work every day to maintain this system. Control room operators monitor real-time dashboards showing the health of the grid across vast regions. They watch for anomalies, for any sign that something might fail. Technicians in hard hats climb transmission towers in rain and snow to inspect equipment. Engineers design systems that can handle failures and route power around problems. Substations filled with massive transformers step voltage up and down. The entire apparatus is designed with redundancy, with backup systems and fail-safes. It's an extraordinary achievement in coordination and engineering. But the grid has a critical vulnerability that most people don't think about. It was built with no expectation of a solar event like the Carrington Event. The power lines that carry electricity act as antennas. They're incredibly long conductors, stretched across the landscape. When a solar storm's electromagnetic pulse sweeps across Earth, these lines don't just carry electricity from power plants. They also carry the induced electrical current from the solar event itself. Unlike telephone lines or internet cables, which have protections built in, the main transmission lines that form the backbone of the grid were designed in an era when solar storms weren't a consideration. The transformers that sit in substations are particularly vulnerable. These massive devices convert voltage for transmission and distribution. Inside each transformer are coils of copper wire wound around iron cores. When a powerful electromagnetic pulse floods through the system, these transformers can be damaged or destroyed. And here's the problem. Transformers are custom built for specific applications. They're not easily replaceable. If a major solar storm damaged transformers across a wide region, replacements would take months or even years to manufacture and install. Some transformers are so large and heavy that transporting them is an engineering challenge in itself. Electrical engineers have studied what would happen if a solar storm like the Carrington Event struck Earth today. Their conclusions are sobering. A direct hit from a solar event as powerful as the 1859 storm, but aimed at populated regions with modern electrical infrastructure, could knock out the power grid across multiple states or even the entire continent. We're not talking about isolated outages. We're talking about cascading failures, where loss of power in one region causes surges in another, triggering more failures, spreading outward like dominoes falling. Without electricity, modern life doesn't just become inconvenient, it becomes impossible for most of us. Within hours, water stops flowing from taps because water treatment plants and pumping stations lose power. Traffic lights go dark, and intersections become chaotic and dangerous. Hospitals switch to backup generators, but those generators have fuel for days, not months. Grocery stores can't operate their cash registers or refrigerate food. Within days, store shelves are empty. Communication infrastructure collapses. Cell towers go down when their backup batteries drain. Radio stations go silent. The internet vanishes. You couldn't call for help, couldn't receive information about what's happening, couldn't coordinate with your community. Supply chains that keep modern civilization functioning require electricity at every step. Factories can't manufacture goods without power. Refineries can't process fuel. Trucks and trains depend on fuel and charging infrastructure to move goods. Within a week, gasoline becomes unavailable. Within 2 weeks, food shortages begin in earnest. Within a month, society itself starts to unravel. And this isn't theoretical speculation. This is what electrical engineers and disaster preparedness experts have modeled based on historical data and our understanding of solar physics. The 1859 Carrington Event is known precisely because it happened to occur when there were enough observers with telescopes to document it. But it probably wasn't unique. Historical records suggest that powerful solar storms hit Earth roughly every 100 to 200 years. Some astronomers believe we may be living on borrowed time, and statistically, we're overdue. In 2012, Earth had a near miss. A powerful solar storm passed through the same region of space that Earth occupies just 9 days after Earth had passed through that location. If the timing had been different by just a week, the storm would have hit us directly. Scientists calculated that such an event would have caused over $2 trillion in economic damage and would have taken years to fully recover from. The grid would have been partially destroyed and would have required massive reconstruction efforts. So what can we do? How can we protect ourselves against a threat we can't see coming until it arrives? Some experts argue that we need to harden the grid. We could install surge protectors and capacitors at key points to absorb electromagnetic pulses. We could upgrade transformers to be more resistant to solar storms. We could create mobile transformer units that could be rapidly deployed to replace damaged equipment. Some of these measures have been implemented in certain areas, but they're expensive, and they slow down the modernization of the grid. Most of the grid, most of the time, remains vulnerable. Other experts focus on monitoring and prediction. NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration maintain satellites that watch the sun constantly. When a solar storm occurs, we get a warning of 15 to 20 minutes before the solar wind reaches Earth. It's not much time, but it's something. In theory, grid operators could use those minutes to shut down parts of the grid, isolating critical infrastructure, potentially preventing some of the cascading failures that would otherwise occur. But this requires sophisticated coordination and infrastructure that's still being developed. The challenge is that protecting the entire grid is extraordinarily expensive and difficult. The grid sprawls across a continent, built piecemeal over more than a century. It's operated by thousands of different utilities, each with their own systems and priorities. Coordinating a unified response to a solar threat requires cooperation at scales that are politically and economically complex. And if you upgrade the grid to prevent a disaster that might not happen for decades or longer, you're spending money that could be used for other priorities. The political and economic incentives don't naturally align with protection against a threat that seems distant and hypothetical. Yet the threat is real, and the potential consequences are severe enough that many experts consider it one of the most serious risks facing modern civilization. It's not a fashionable risk. It doesn't get the same attention as climate change or pandemics. But in terms of the scale and speed of potential impact, a solar storm could be more devastating than either of those threats. A pandemic might kill a certain percentage of the population. Climate change unfolds over decades and gives us time to adapt. A solar storm could collapse civilization in days. There's an irony in this vulnerability. Our advanced civilization is powerful precisely because it's interconnected and coordinated. The grid connects power plants to users across vast distances. The internet connects information systems. Supply chains connect manufacturers and consumers. This interconnectedness makes our system efficient and capable. But it also means that a single catastrophic event can cascade through the entire system, affecting everything at once. In 1859, the interconnectedness was limited. The telegraph network was important, but it wasn't essential to survival. Agriculture still happened. Food still reached people. In 2024, the interconnectedness is nearly total. Everything depends on electricity. Everything depends on the grid. So we're in a strange position. We've built a civilization that's more fragile in some ways than civilizations of the past, even though it's more powerful in other ways. We're dependent on systems that worked fine yesterday, but could fail catastrophically tomorrow, based on something happening millions of miles away in the corona of the sun. And we know this. Engineers and scientists have been raising alarms about this vulnerability for decades. Yet the grid remains largely unprotected against a solar storm, and the infrastructure to rapidly recover from a major event is inadequate. What makes this particularly interesting is how it reveals the hidden assumptions that underlie modern life. We assume continuity. We assume the systems that powered our devices yesterday will power them tomorrow. We assume supply chains will keep functioning. We assume we can call for help if we need it. All of these assumptions are conditional on the power grid continuing to work. And the power grid's continued operation is something we've taken for granted. Something we've never had to seriously plan for because we've never experienced a major failure. Until we do. This is why understanding the Carrington Event is important. It's not just history. It's a window into what our civilization could lose. The 1859 solar storm damaged telegraph systems and created spectacular auroras, but it didn't create a civilization-threatening catastrophe.